Welcome to our strategy presentation titled the VectorVest 7 Homepage. My name is Todd Shaffer, Manager of Research for VectorVest, and I'll be providing your strategy presentation this evening. VectorVest is a very powerful and sophisticated set of research and investing tools, and yet for all its power, it was created to make the task of investing easier and more productive. Every week we present new and creative ways to employ the capabilities of this system, some of them simple, some of them a little more complex. Perhaps it's just human nature to assume that for something to be good, it must be complex. Well, we hope this week to dispel that myth, or at least challenge your thinking. In last week's essay, Dr. DiLiddo described how he uses his homepage. His approach is so simple, it's really all you need to be successful. Let's move into the program. If you're a regular viewer of these strategy presentations, you've heard us say the VectorVest 7 homepage is designed to read just like the front page of a newspaper, with the most important information above the fold. This is our default layout, and we've put what we think is the most important information above the fold. But you can customize it in any way that you like. Put on the information in which you are most interested. Dr. DiLiddo described his setup as follows. He begins in the upper left corner with our quick list of the major indices. In the center of the market timing gauge, but on the right, instead of our training gadget, he uses top news stories. So if I click the Home tab and click the wrench, I open the Choose a Gadget tool. And here we have a whole assortment of gadgets from which you can choose. All of these gadgets, when I click on one or select it, in this case News, once I've selected it, it will pop into what we call position 1 in that upper left-hand corner. I'll click the wrench again and I can minimize the gadget toolbar. And if I click the wrench for the news gadget, I have different kinds of news from which to choose. Clicking the pull down arrow, I have market news and I have stock news. So we're going to choose the market news, and I can change the size from medium to small or large, and we'll go small. Clicking the wrench again minimizes that toolbar. By putting my cursor on the title bar for the news gadget, I get the crossed arrows. Left click and hold, and I can drag and reposition this gadget anywhere I want on my home page. I have 3 columns that have no end, so I can put as many gadgets as I want in these 3 columns. On his second row, he uses VectorVest at a glance, the color guard, and instead of training, he uses the advanced declines bar graph. Again, let's open up the gadget toolbar. And we have 2 ways to graph advanced declines. So I click Advances Declines. This is the bar graph, and I'll simply drag it over to that position. But I can also select the mini graph, minimize the gadget. In the toolbar for the mini graph, I can select as a type an advanced decline graph. This now shows me in graph form the trend of those advanced declines. So throughout the day, I can then monitor those movements. Let's make that small as well. And that's 2 ways to look at that same advanced decline information. Dr. DiLiddo, using the bar graphs, would see those bar graphs move throughout the day, where the mini graph shows us that trend throughout the day. For his third row, Dr. DiLiddo uses some quick lists that you'll find at the bottom of our default page. Top VST stock, so we can move that up. Top RT industries. And if we scroll down to the bottom here, top RT sectors. We'll have to kind of leapfrog it here. And then we can clean up the other gadgets we're not using. You may be, like me, a little more visual oriented, so I might prefer to have maybe a mini graph of the VVC or the major indices as well as the VVC. and I'll move that down to my 4th row. That way I can see the trend of the VectorVest composite. But essentially in the top 3 rows now we have the setup that Dr. DiLiddo described in his essay. We can use this information on an end-of-day basis to prepare for the next day's market, or use this also on an intraday basis to gauge market follow-through. Either way, Dr. DiLiddo outlines in his essay a process that tells us when it's safe to be buying stocks, what stocks we want to purchase, and when we can sell. He begins his essay by saying, what I do is I read the quick list of the key market indicators that appear in our quick list in the upper left-hand corner. How are they trading? How are they affecting our guidance? What is our guidance in the second market timing gauge gadget in the center? This gadget is showing us the current status of our market trend analysis and conveying our guidance. Here we read the color guard is bearish. VectorVest does not advocate buying any stocks at this time. All the major indices were down anywhere from 1/10 to 1/3%. Here reading that we're bearish, so unless we short the market, we know that we're not going to buy any stocks. The trend is against us. Of course, remember, as Dr. DiLiddo admonishes us in his essay, the color guard indicates if it's okay to take on positions, but it doesn't tell us when to sell. He writes, quote, subscribers often sell stocks when the color guard says not to buy stocks, and that's a mistake. VectorVest advocates selling low VST sell-rated stocks when the market is falling, but the color guard does not have the information it needs to tell you when to sell your stocks. You have to make that decision based upon your own exit criteria and personal circumstances, end quote. Next, by tracking the news throughout the day, we can see what's going on in the market. What's driving the current trend? What were the results of some of the reports that the government or other organizations are releasing that would impact the market? The boxes in the second row labeled VectorVest at a glance, the color guard, and advances and declines. These provide a series of metrics that keep score of what's happening on the floors of the various exchanges. VectorVest at a glance keeps track of our key metrics and their absolute values. The color guard data set displays the short-term trends of the indicators and the status of several of our timing signals. The cells in the price, relative timing, and buy-sell ratio columns are all yellow and red, with one little quick whipsaw of green here on the relative timing. That happened when its value bounced above 1 for one day. With the addition of 3 red lights today, that shows us a trend strengthening to the downside. The advanced decline gadget shows us more declines than gains. Although we saw that trend weaken throughout the day, it still closed with more declines than advances. None of these are good signs for buying stocks, hence our guidance not to buy. At this point, you might just check the status of your portfolio and close any positions hitting their stops. Then just close the program. Rest secure in the knowledge that you're not trading against the market's trend. But that would make this a very short and incomplete strategy presentation, so for the sake of demonstration, let's just pretend the market conditions were favorable and that now is a good time to buy stocks. Well, what should I buy? Well, we see in Dr. DiLiddo's third row of gadgets, we're looking at the top VST stocks, we're looking at the top RT industries, and the top RT sectors. This is a great place to start, and with a few clicks of the mouse, we can cherry pick the best performers from these lists. The cherry picking technique I'll demonstrate is by far one of our easiest to set up and to analyze. It uses our Midas Touch graph layout and is called Colt 45. We demonstrated this technique in a strategy presentation from May 31st, 2013, and I refer you back to that strategy if you want to really examine the methodology in detail. But let's get the ball rolling by analyzing some of our top VST stocks. Coming to the quick list, I'm going to right click on International Forest and I'm going to view the stock graph. That opens up our stock graph. Let's maximize it in the window. And this is the default VectorVest layout. We're going to change our layout to the Midas Touch layout, which should already be in your graph layout selection. This study was originally designed as a timer for gold, using a series of moving averages to smooth out the historically volatile action of gold indexes. It's composed on our top graph of 2 moving averages of the VectorVest stop price So a 10 period and a 65 period moving average of stop price, and on our subgraph, a 40 period moving average of relative timing. For this cherry picking technique, we're going to shorten our time frame from a 1-year look back period to 3 months. To get a positive indication, we'll begin with RT. RT has to be at a new 3-month high. If we use a crosshair cursor, it becomes very easy to see with the horizontal line that RT is at a new 3-month high. We also need the 10 and 65-day moving averages to be at a new 3-month high, and of course we want the 10 to be above the 65. This study makes it very easy to discern if a stock's price action is doing what we want it to do. Bottom left to upper right action, the smoother the better. And so by using a moving average, I'll overlay price on top of the moving averages, we see that yes, not only is price rising, bottom left to upper right, because our T moving average is also rising, we're building momentum in that upward price trend. And of course, we like to buy rising stocks in rising markets. So while International Forest passes the test here, of course, the market timing information told us on the home page that now is not the time to be buying stocks. So we won't be actually making this purchase, but maybe I want to track this stock so that when the market timing does change in my favor, that I can again come back to it and see if it's still rising. I could simply right click on International Forest and add it to a watch list. Just as easily, I can also left click on Canfor Corporation, view its stock graph. Remember to change my time frame to 3 months. Take off our price. RT is at a 3-month high, as is price, green above red. Another candidate. And so it becomes very easy, kind of a go no go gauge here to analyze whether or not a stock is worthy of consideration. And so our top VST stocks seem to be passing the test. And again, each indicator at a 3-month high, the RT value is above 1, and the 10-day is above the 65-day. And so I could add those stocks to my watch list or just write down their symbols. Our second source of top performing stocks is to look at the top performing RT industries. These are the industries that are in the strongest price uptrends. And we'll see the techniques would be very similar. I right click on the building wood products industry. I'm going to view the stocks in the industry group. So now I have a list of stocks that are in VST descending order. But the one thing I want to make sure of is I want to make sure that I have stocks that are on the proper exchange. I want to make sure that I have stocks that are priced over $1. If I scroll to the right, I also want to make sure that I have stocks that have acceptable average volumes. And so in this case, I might hold down my control key and left click to tag those stocks that have at least 6 figures of average volume. Scrolling back to the left, double check their prices and the exchange, and I'll graph selected. Again, I'm in my Midas Touch graph. Let's change our time frame down to 3 months. And look how quickly and easily we can identify the stocks that we like. Looking first at RT and then the moving averages on stop. I can click through very quickly and identify stocks that do or don't meet the criteria. So Ainsworth Lumber would be rejected because RT is not at a 3-month high, as is the case with NBD. Another point I'll share as we close these graphs is, remember, we're looking at stocks that are all in the same industry, and we want to be industry diversified. So I'd only take a couple stocks from each industry to maintain that diversification. The same is true for sector diversification as well. Applying the technique to the sectors now. Our top sector is apparel. If we right click on it, we'll view the stocks in the business sector. There are only 3 stocks in this sector. If we look at their average volumes, only the top stock has acceptable average volume. It is priced above $1 and it is on the Toronto Exchange, so I like that. I'll graph it. Again, go to my 3-month window. And we can see that it passes the test and is a candidate. And so you can see that's a very easy and effective way to analyze stocks and find those stocks that are in building uptrends. But we've also discovered that the Midas Touch not only gives me a great way to know when to buy a stock, but it also gives us a great way to know when to sell. The key is the 40-day moving average of RT. To demonstrate, let's go back into our top RT industry, and we'll look at these stocks in the group. You remember Ainsworth Lumber was one of those stocks that had the poor graph pattern. So we'll graph it again. Here we are in our setup. I'm going to pull the left edge back a little bit. The key to knowing when to sell is the movement of the 40-day moving average of RT. If it's peaked and is heading lower, as it was right here, move a day ahead. As RT came off of its peak, simply add price to the graph. If price is below its recent high and trending lower, you know it's time to protect and or take profits. In fact, you might even, if I click on a freehand line, you might even say, well, okay, well, there's the previous low. So if I break through that low, then I know that my uptrend has ended. Dr. DiLiddo says he studies Midas Touch graphs of all of his stocks every day. It's fast, easy, and takes the guesswork out of managing my portfolio. In closing, Dr. DiLiddo says he's been doing this technique for a couple of months now. He's made money and is amazed at all the things we can do from the VectorVest 7 homepage. So there you have it, folks, an approach that's so simple it's all you really need to be successful. If you have any questions about this strategy presentation or anything else VectorVest, we will be having a live Q&A webcast on Monday at noon. Notice that we did change that time. It's noon now, Eastern Time. And you can register at the VectorVest.com events tab. Of course, we also have a link in the VectorVest views. But that'll conclude our presentation for this evening. I appreciate you being with us. Of course, if you have any other questions, you can call us in the product support department. And I encourage you to look at the VectorVest University presentations that we've done historically. We referenced a couple tonight. It's a great way to learn how to use more and more of the tools within the VectorVest system. Until next time, have a great evening.